Welcome back to part 2 of Stephanie's story. Make sure you watch part 1 before tuning into this one.
Did you guys have conversations around this? Like, you know,
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, there's all
because it felt like you did it at all.
Yeah.
Not to.
I think they tried their best. I didn't want to talk.
Yeah.
I was very...
You're there first, you said, right?
My dad's first, my mom's second.
Okay.
My brother's 8 years older than me. So, like, in kindergarten, he was in high school already. So he wasn't as, like, closely involved. He moved out when I was maybe middle school, high
And he was
school.
a boy. It's completely
he was
different.
and way older than me. So, like, he kind of had his own
Thing
struggles,
going on,
his
yeah.
own life, you know?
Yeah.
I was really difficult to talk to, I think, because I didn't know how to express it. So, like, I was very, like, argumentative as a teenager. I don't think they knew how to talk about it either. I don't think we knew what to say.
Yeah.
So, like,
which is huge. I think that's a big
Yeah.
other point to discuss, because I think sometimes it's like there's a shift of like, oh, well, we weren't able to talk as a family, whatever. But it's like people don't know how.
what were we?
Sometimes.
Yeah. And like they were just trying to keep me safe when I wasn't trying to keep myself safe. So like, what did I expect? Maybe at the time I thought differently,
Yeah.
but through my recovery journey, I've been like looked at back at it. Like, what were they supposed to do? What do you say? Like they were just trying to keep me okay, like safe, physically safe.
There's no instruction manual.
Right.
not,
So like,
yeah.
how do you do that?
especially for mental health. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
There's
Like, I
nothing
feel-
like you go to page 33 and it's like, oh, that's what I do for Stephanie.
Yeah.
And like, and I've seen it most prevalent. Not to like get off topic, but I've seen it prevalent a lot in especially in the work that we're doing. Like I have the benefit of working with the Latino population, and I've seen it in the Latino.
Yeah.
This is like
Culture's huge.
not talked about at all. Like I'm here working with a participant who's really young, and like I'm talking to dad afterwards, letting him know like the techniques that we're working, and he goes, "Why are you doing that?"
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, because that's
Yeah.
what recovery is. That's what
Yeah.
wellness is. And like, and it's really interesting what happens, right? Because then you teach them, and they're like, they start to try it,
Correct,
and it's like a
correct.
really awesome thing. It's like,
whoa.
whoa, hold up, like, right? Like
That's part of it, though.
I'll never forget the first time, and I've learned how to maneuver this better now. My very first Spanish-speaking participant, I told dad, we do offer services to support parents too,
Yeah.
and he went, "Oh, I don't need that. I don't need that. I'm okay. No, I don't need that." And I'm like, well, that's Latin America for you.
Right.
That's what it is.
And it's even
tie
like-
your bootstraps. We got to go to
Yeah.
work today. You don't have time
Yeah.
to be sad.
But my dad was like that too, in the sense of like, which I'm assuming and kind of know it was passed down from his parents.
Yeah, I
too.
think it's
We don't
culture,
air our dirty
period.
laundry.
Correct. And I think more of the like when you look at back
Older
past
traditions.
generations,
Yeah.
it's like that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how it was.
different
Absolutely.
cultures,
Yeah.
different whatever
Yeah.
it is. So yeah, the conversations I think were difficult to have. I don't think we knew how to have them, especially as a minor, like with like therapists, especially in those centers I was in. Like my mom would come. I mean, what I can always say is they visited me every single day, and
That's
it
great.
wasn't always close. Like my mom would work. She had 2 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
My youngest sister was younger too, and she had a lot of challenges as a kid with with her special needs, and all of that was a lot. So like, but one of them was there every single day. And
Wow,
sometimes
that's
it was an
awesome.
hour away. My mom would work all day and then come there. So my dad had to be with my sisters, but they were
That's good.
always there.
Yeah,
my
that
mom would
support.
join therapy. My dad was a little hesitant with the whole therapy thing again, but my mom especially was very involved in my care. So I think that's how they tried to help.
Yep.
So did we necessarily talk about it? No. Would I have allowed us to talk about it? Probably not at the time.
Yeah.
And I also was doing a lot of like dangerous things that I didn't want them to know. And when it came out, I was so ashamed. I can't even tell you how many times it was like, oh, we're going to have a family therapy session. Like, oh, I found out you did this. I was like, oh my God. Older people, right? Older men was a problem for me, especially as a teenager. So whenever that came out, it was mortifying.
Yeah.
Because one, my parents are my parents. I don't want them to know any of these things.
Of course.
I'm being destructive. Some people they knew of or knew who they were. Cops got involved. Like there was a lot of it, and it was really embarrassing.
Did you have any underlying trauma that stemmed from your parents or maybe grandparents or anything like that? Did they
Nothing
have
like-
backgrounds that were abusive or
No.
nothing?
Nothing specific like that. No.
No, I think that I think there's dysfunction. There's
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't always have to
took
be a
me
bad
time to learn
situation
that,
or
though.
scenario.
It took me a lot of time to learn that because, especially when I was younger, I questioned a lot. Like, how did I end up where I am? Like, I wasn't abused in any sort of way. You know what I mean? It was a lot of like, how did I end up doing these things?
And
It
that's
doesn't
what-
make sense.
And that's why a lot of people are hesitant to seek help because they're like, I don't have an excuse to be
I don't have a reason.
depressed or
right.
anxious.
Like you need, yeah, and
Like, I needed a reason. It would make more sense.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Logically, yeah.
But I
Exactly,
learned over
yeah.
time, like you were just saying, the dysfunction, the chaos, the fight.
all-
like,
yeah, all of those things.
I think now I understand created. Like I still, if people yell, I either cry or just leave. Like I just can't handle that. It's a lot. Even if it's like nothing major, but if things get tense, I withdraw. And I think it's from the upbringing and the fighting and the chaos and all of that,
Absolutely.
So, but the substances came in like, so while I'm going through these hospitalizations, I start trying different things. I start drinking with my friends, smoking a little weed, I found out from those things how much of a better outlet those things were. Mm-hmm. Did the self-harming stop? No. Maybe it became less at the time. It depends what was going on. But now with drugs and alcohol, I had a bigger release and a better release,
Yeah.
And I remember around 16, I'd still go
Quote,
for like
unquote.
bonfires and stuff. But I have one very specific memory. Someone brought like alcohol in a Coke bottle, trying to be sneaky, all that stuff.
They picked the wrong drink. Maybe Sprite. It could have been Jack, right? It could have been Jack or something. Right?
Yeah, I think it was just like, we're going to pretend.
I'm glad that you're
kinda.
not drinking, Michael. I'm glad you're not in that life, man. That's really nice.
That's funny. Yeah, we didn't.
Hey, I've been there.
Yeah, you're a little too
We went
passed out to know what it was.
We weren't very smart about any of it.
Yeah.
But I very specifically remember we were outside of my friend's house at this, having a bonfire with our like close group we normally would. Everyone would like take a couple sips here and there and run off and play manhunt, right? And I remember this one time, I was like, yeah, I'm coming. And I stayed back to drink more than they were. Like I needed more. And I remember moving forward, like if we went to like a party or a bonfire and there wasn't alcohol, I was pissed.
Yeah.
Like I was looking for whatever I could find. So and I had older friends too. So like I would pay them to bring me out. I would hide it in my bedroom and just like hope to God no one found it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it became more of a consistent, and I was seeking it constantly. So then it like amped up, and then it was like pills. Like I was prescribed medication for my anxiety from a young age. I started taking medication for mental health at like 12, 13 when I was hospitalized, and then I got prescribed meds for anxiety. Like we would leave it in the nurse's office at school. So I learned very quickly, if I feel anxious, I'm going to take this medication and I'll feel better. So then it was, well, maybe if I take more, I'll feel even better. And it started younger, so it was kind of, that became my thought process too. So if I got like dental work and I got pain medication prescribed, I was like, I know if I take a couple, I'm going to feel even better.
Yeah.
So it became that, and sneaking it and stealing it. And so it just, from there, just took
kind
off.
of went. Yeah. Okay. So what would you say was kind of like the turning point for you with like recognizing, I guess, like the outlets that you're using or where they got you in life?
Because it just seems like at this point you just have like a very addictive personality.
It was anything.
Because I had a very addictive personality too. I would just, there was a point for
Anything.
me, it was small, it was
Yeah.
short, but it was like, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do
To
this, I
the
want to do this.
excessive degree,
Exactly.
yeah.
We're like, I want to black
Yeah.
out. I want to,
Yes, it was the alcohol, it was the drugs, it was the self-harm, it was people, it was all of that. It was being reckless.
Do you think
driving
ultimately
fast,
what was the reason for it? To numb like yourself, to
I think all of it was to escape how I was feeling.
Right.
And I
Okay.
think honestly, part of like my depression and anxiety, I don't think anything caused all of it. I think some people have it,
Yeah.
and the
100%.
science behind it, right?
Yeah.
But I think some of it was, I think it's always a combination.
It
It's
is.
environment.
It's all.
Yeah,
it's a good point that you just said that. I think everybody has it, and I think it's up to whether those people that have it more than others to take the responsibility to find the
And
support.
some people struggle with it worse than others, but I think it was a combination for me anyway. I think the point where you were saying, like the point where I was like, this needs to change.
Yeah. Like,
So from the point of like escalating with substance use to that point, it was years long of the same things but worse, right?
yeah.
So my riskiness became worse. My substance abuse, my body was addicted to several different things, right? I had moved to Florida because this was all New York still. This is crazy. So when I like people, this shocks everyone. Okay, so I have no problem talking about it. So when I was 18, I got hospitalized, and now I'm an adult, so I'm in a different unit than
different
the
place.
juveniles. I was in this specific hospital. I met this guy who was a lot older than me, and he had a house in Florida. He was struggling with substances and mental health, so like I was like, this is a great idea. I'm gonna run away to Florida with him. So that's exactly what I did. I told my parents I was going to my friend's house for a sleepover, packed a bag, left my car at the airport, and left. and they obviously found out. But that's why I ended up in Florida. So like it was obviously not a great situation.
So you came here, never left since from
I
that?
went back
Oh,
like,
okay.
for snippets because that was obviously not a good situation. So I went back for a little. Then I ended up with that guy still moving back down and staying. So that opened up a whole new few years of my story of like chaos, destruction.
But in Florida.
Yes. Now
Okay.
I was a couple hours north of South Florida. I knew nobody. But that kind of started a new section of my journey because now I'm down here. I met new people down here. I was introduced
So
to
was he-
You were
recovery.
pretty young
Was he
too.
just
I was
like
18.
So is he
Okay.
just like a sugar daddy, like, and he'd kind of like not like
No,
not
that's a
saying
good
you,
question.
not saying there was
No.
ever any sexually thing, but like he kind of took care of you and you stayed with him and you
It
guys
was
kind of
like,
partied.
I could do whatever I wanted. So that was a huge part
And I'm
of
only
it.
asking that question because that's a very
It's a
common thing
valid
nowadays.
question.
A
No, for
very
real.
common thing nowadays.
Yeah.
The sugar baby
That's
thing
why
of
I
like
talk about
young
it because
people.
it's like it happened.
It did, yeah.
100%.
I didn't care what I was doing. I didn't care about my safety. He was heavily addicted to substances, and it was a disaster. So it wasn't necessarily like fun. In the sense of like I had a place to live, yeah, like that was great. I was living in Florida by the beach. You know, did we have money? No, but it was for me at the time ideal. I could do whatever I wanted.
Freedom.
I could drink as much as I wanted. He was using substances, so I could use more substances. I went to college. Of course, I had to keep going to school at the time. So
Yeah,
I did
that's
Oh,
go to
you were doing like
college.
online.
No, I
How
was going to school.
Okay.
I was going.
Where
to
were you
Wow,
going
so
to
you
school?
kind of
A
school was
Broward
kind
or
of
like
still like an
somewhere-
outlet, but a positive
Throughout
one
my entire
throughout
story.
your
Yeah, I was going to a local community college up
In
where
North
I was
Florida?
living in Florida. Yeah. But things got way worse.
Yeah.
Because now like no one else is around. I met new people, which some were good, some were not so good to be around. You know, so I could go out and literally do whatever I wanted, and he was doing whatever he wanted, which then would affect me. It was just really, it was really bad. It was really chaotic.
So didn't have a friend group or anybody
I built
there at
one
the
down-
time?
Not at the time. I moved down. Literally, only knew him.
Ah.
He was in and out of jail a few times.
And you were how old? Sorry, for so many
No,
questions.
you're fine. 18, 19.
Okay.
When I first moved.
How old were you when you left? 16? 15?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and the last 4 or 5 years I've been in and out of the hospitals. Like nothing was like a set sound decision, you know. But I met people down in Florida. I met some friends that I ended up staying friends with, but that also opened new doors to more destructiveness, right? So that's when things really got bad. And my mental health was plummeting as the substances were more involved too, and the alcohol. So I ended up coming to South Florida for treatment for the first time. I had been in and out of the hospitals, but I'd never gotten help for substance use before. So that's how I ended up in South Florida. And I think I was 21 or 22. So that's how I ended up in South Florida. So at that time, and it's all blurry because I was heavily into the substances, but I do remember I was now going for my bachelor's degree up there, and I did not care if I lived or died.
Yeah.
Like that's as easily as I can.
So
describe
crazy. You're
it.
going to college and
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
your schoolwork.
Yeah,
and it's like,
I
I don't care if I
know.
die.
It is.
But honestly, this happens
So
more
crazy. It's like
often
your
than
brain
not.
does.
Yeah.
You really do care.
Yeah.
Because you're
That's-
doing all this stuff.
I think that does show me like, because throughout my entire journey, it was like some part of me like hoped that
Wants
one
the
day,
best for you, yeah.
and hoped one day. I didn't even know if I cared about that at the time, but I just like was like, there's got to be a reason for this. There has
Yeah.
to be a bigger purpose
Yeah.
than me just suffering through.
Ah, that's funny. I was going to ask you that question, but I
Absolutely.
forgot.
Yeah.
Just popped in my head was, do you felt like a lot of the reason that this happened was because you didn't have any purpose in life, or like you
I
felt, no,
like I didn't
lack
have
of purpose?
Yeah, I felt just like empty, especially
Yeah.
at the end. Like I was empty, completely.
But you got to
empty.
understand too, like, so as a person who maybe began their challenges, you said at like 12, okay? Because like she hadn't yet gotten to that experience of like stepping really into the healing process of
Yeah.
recovery. Because there's generational trauma and things that you've discussed that kind of led up to those points. But you create shame. The list goes on of emotions that you also like baggage that you create through the journey of trying
Like
to
each thing carries on to the next.
correct.
Yeah.
And you, by the time you hit that like bottom, you have like so much. Yeah. And so it's like you're through that. Oh yeah. Wow. That's crazy. Through that process, it's like it's getting worse and worse
Yeah.
because of that, because
Right.
now you're internalizing.
just building on.
Yeah. And you're making these bad decisions.
Yeah.
You don't want to,
Right.
like nobody chooses like, I want my life to be like this horrible. I want to
Yeah.
like be this
Yeah.
sad. I want to,
Yeah.
you know, and
But
I
that's
always
what
tell
it was.
people.
It was that sadness
Yeah.
that I've always carried from that younger age but it was amplified.
Yeah.
Right? It came to the point where and I'll never forget this either. And I don't know if I've ever even told my brother this. Maybe I have, but I was still living up in Northern Florida. Basically, everyone around me was like, "You need help." And I remember my dad called me, and so they were all talking about this in the background up in New York, and I didn't really know at the time because I got Baker acted in Florida, so then it all kind of came out. Because I remember my mom calling me, and she was like, "What are we gonna do about like you taking pills and drinking and hurting yourself?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Where did you hear that?" And she was like, "You told me," and I was in a blackout. So I was like, "Oh, this sucks." Like, I was kind of like, "Oh, it's up now." And it went on for a little bit longer, but then they were working on it. My dad called me and he said, "Find somewhere to go because you're going. I'm getting in my truck and I'm driving down to Florida. It'll take me about 2 days, but you're going, so figure it out." And and with the school thing, it was finals time. So all my professors let me take my finals early.
Wow.
And I was like, "I'm not going till I finish my finals." And he bugged me all day. Come on, this is ridiculous. Like, and I'm sitting at the table writing an essay. And as soon as I was done, I was like, "All right, let's go."
Wow.
But I remember that day. So my brother and I hadn't spoken in like years because when I was 18, I had a major suicide attempt. And in the hospital, then the psychology, it was a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
And my brother found me. And because of that, I think it was just too much.
Traumatic.
He had his
For him,
own,
yeah.
he had his own struggles besides mine. And he's the one that found me. And we didn't talk after that for years.
Wow.
The day I went to treatment,
Yeah.
the day I was like, "All right, I'll go to treatment for substance use," he called me. And it was the first time, and I saw him at my grandma's funeral, but that was it. So he calls me, and I was like, "Why is my brother calling? Like, we don't talk." And he called me, and he was like, "Hey, I just wanted you to know that, like, I'm sorry I've blamed you for things that weren't you. It was our parents. It was whatever." And I was like, "Did mom talk to you?" And he was like, "No, what are you talking about?" And I was like, "Well, I'm going to treatment today, you know?" And it was just the crazy. I was
Wow.
like, "Okay, this is what I'm supposed to be
Yeah.
doing."
Yeah. Oh.
So it was crazy. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget that. So that's like where things turned. And it took me a little bit. I was in and out of treatment, in and out of like recovery residences for a couple years down in South Florida. But that's when things started to change because at least I had made a step to like, I need to get better.
Yeah. So let's talk about today. And you have been in this, we call it, what is it, long-term recovery? How do you see today compared to the way you saw things back then?
It's so hard to even like compare it because people are always like, "I can't even see you being like that," because it's just a different person, a different lifetime.
Yeah.
I've carried myself through the entire thing, right? Like, I've always been in there, and like whether it was hoping that this was for a purpose one day, whether it was asking for help at certain times, whether it was hanging on to school, like I was there the whole time. But I just can't even like really compare it. It's just crazy. But
Yeah.
I like to explain it as like the little things because those are the most meaningful to me. So obviously, like now I'm not using substances, right? I haven't used substances, alcohol, and coming up on 6 years in November.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's obviously like a big obvious one, right? I haven't self-harmed in probably about same 6 years or
Likewise.
so. So that's obviously
huge. Yeah.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, it's really like the little things
Yeah.
that are huge. Like I can handle like emotions today,
Yeah.
right? Like I don't turn to destruction if I'm upset.
Yeah.
I don't take it out on everyone else. I have meaningful like all of those things. I was never a productive member of society. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't hold a job. You know, all of those things are like the biggest things to me because that's what I wanted to be normal.
Yeah.
And I'm not normal because that's not even a real thing. But I'm definitely not there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I get
those
you.
normal things I was supposed to be doing are the things I wanted. I just didn't think I could do them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was my thought process. Like that's really great for everyone else, but that's not possible for me. I
Yeah.
can never do that. That's where I think a lot of the suicidal ideation came in because I did not have hope that I could get there.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's the point?
Yeah.
But for all those things and all the people in my life that built up to me carrying through has brought me here. So I can't compare it. Obviously those big things, but it really is those little things like friendships, my family,
Yeah.
my job. You know, all those things are like the big thing.
Those are the big
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
absolutely.
For sure.
Okay. So I have to do this though, because we have like, you know, kind of the past. Now we have like the future you, right, of overcoming. What would you say are like some of those key things that were important in your healing journey for you to be able to overcome all of that to get to this place where you are today?
Yeah. So like getting me from that struggling place.
Yeah, absolutely. What were some key things?
That may help others as well.
Yeah. So one was asking for help. Or because even though sometimes it was somewhat forced, I still had to go with it.
Yeah.
I could have just been like, if you come here, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
You know, I could have been like,
So
you can come to Florida,
crucial.
but I'm leaving, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But I didn't. I was
Yeah.
like, all right, let's go. You
So
know?
acknowledging, right? Like we have to kind of be like,
like some things, even if I didn't want help, I knew something had to change or I was going to die. And at that point, maybe it was just that day I was like, okay, today I don't want to. Today, like maybe there is something more. So that acknowledgement, that awareness, that education piece, because I was still going to therapy through this and all of these things. So like I was learning more. Support is literally number one. So I've had people, a few select people in my life that never left my side.
Yeah.
And I mean like maybe 2 or 3. And that's what then like with my job now ties so close together. So I have one friend and she passed away in January, so it's kind of difficult to talk about. But she, like I got Baker acted and I woke up in the ER and she was sitting there. And like those are the people I had. And she's one of the few. But like when I was using substances, like we went to college together and she was a little older and had like a family and kids, but we just gravitated to each other. And when I was using substances, she'd stay after school and we'd go for walks because she didn't want me to be alone. And like, so that's like, now what I do for work, that's peer support, you know? It's like looking back, I had those very few people and without them, I wouldn't have made it, you know? So it really was like that support. And like I said, my family was there. Maybe they didn't know what to do. Maybe I didn't want them to, but they were there, you know?
I think God sends angels. I mean, not everyone's
100%.
religious,
No, 100%.
but I think God sends angels like that, you know, that you don't
100%.
realize. And it's like, they're legit just people that are
It didn't matter what I did.
down.
And I could tell her she's the only one that knew like the worst things I was doing.
Yeah.
But I had that one person I could tell because holding it in was killing me.
Yeah.
You know, so.
So
yeah.
what would your advice be to like someone who is going through those struggles now, like that you kind of mentioned throughout this episode? Like what would you kind of advise?
I mean, my biggest thing is it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be to everyone, but find that one person that you can just say like, I'm not okay. Even if you're not ready to talk fully. I almost wore my Recover Out Loud shirt today because that's like my favorite saying.
Yeah.
But I wore my Lighthouse shirt because it's such a symbol for me.
I know it
And I have like my Lighthouse tattoo.
Yep.
It's such a symbol for me of like, even though I couldn't see the light there, it was there. And I just had to get a little further through that darkness to see that small glimmer. And that's what I try to tell people. Like, you can't see it, but I've seen it. Like, I've been where you are and I got there. And it was that brief little like flicker that kept me going, you know? So it is possible. And I know that because I still live it, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a huge one for me is that like maybe you don't believe it, but I believe it for you.
Yeah.
You know, and if you can just find that one person that you can be real with, sometimes that's all you can hold on to.
Yeah.
But asking for help, and even if it's just educating yourself on what's going on, or like it's just like you have to find something that keeps you going until sometimes you don't find it in yourself right away. That came eventually for me, but there's got to be one thing, and even if it's just saying I'm not okay.
Yeah. What would you say are like the biggest misconceptions surrounding like suicide and mental health that still need to be addressed?
That's a great question because and that's something that like I'm very passionate about because of my experience.
Maybe some of those that you personally experienced
Yeah,
too. Some of
exactly.
those stigmas.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception that it's attention seeking or that it's misbehaving or, you know, like you're just being dramatic, like all these
selfish.
things. Yeah, that one gets me like every time.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah,
I
that one
hear it all
really
the
gets me, and I understand where that's coming
Yeah,
from.
you can
because
understand
it affects
it.
everyone around you. And yes, it was about me being in so much
But who does it affect the
pain.
most? The person that's dead.
Right,
You know? So it's a
exactly.
crazy concept to think.
Yeah, so I think that's a huge one still. And I think the biggest one is that you shouldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
So
I think, that's horrible
like
for
if I'm-
anything.
luckily, and I'm very grateful I haven't had like suicidal ideation in a long time. But if I did, because it's possible, right? It doesn't just end because you get into your next stage.
It's part of recovery. Yeah,
it's part of what I deal with.
Yeah.
The stigma that you shouldn't talk about it. That if you talk about it, you're going to do it. Mm-hmm. Because if I feel or have those, if I have those thoughts, sometimes just telling someone, like I did think about it, or I had this random thought the other day, like that might stop me from going any further. So that is the biggest one to me that you can't talk about, that suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
That is part of the mental health condition you deal with daily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that one gets me like fired up.
One of my favorite lessons, and the reason I got really, I know my listeners couldn't see it, but I got very reactive when you said that, because I agree. One of my favorite lessons that I ever learned in a training here at South Florida Wellness Network is that talking about it does not mean that they're going to do it.
Right. And it could save their life.
It could save their, like, I wish I had these tools back in middle school.
Right.
When I was talking to that friend that I was
Yeah.
talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if I just would have, instead of feeling chills and like getting skittish and not saying anything, like, hey, are you okay?
But we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And now we've learned.
Yeah.
So now
Of
we
course,
get to
yeah,
then
of
pass
course.
that along.
And that's why I'm so big on like mental health first aid,
Yes.
youth mental health first
Youth,
aid,
yeah.
teen mental health first aid, right? Equipping even teenagers and youth
Yeah.
that are going to.
Because now
support-
I've aged out of youth, technically.
Yeah, me too, girl.
I mean, I feel it, but
I'm on my way too.
yeah, you're almost there.
You're next,
You're right
Mike.
behind me. Most of this happening was in my youth.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I got this time from treatment to now, almost 6 years. I mean, I just turned 30, so I was like 24.
Yeah.
So I was still young. You know,
Absolutely.
so-
Okay, now if you could go back and talk to your younger self, okay,
Oh boy.
yeah, what would you tell your younger self?
I think now I would, that same message of like, it's possible.
Yeah.
Like that message of hope that you might not feel like it and you might not see any way out of this besides the darkness that you're in. Like there is hope and it is possible.
Yeah.
Even if I don't know how or what or when or why or who, it is.
Do you think this is kind of one of those things where everybody's different and there's an different approach for everything, or do you think this is something that needs to be like aggressively loved, aggressively attended to? Not aggressive as in like, yo, come on, but like, let's say like maybe your parents know you're going through something, but they don't know help, but they still are like, yo, I don't know how to help, but I'm gonna try my best, you know.
But isn't that what like love is?
Oh, 100%.
Like-
No, I wouldn't. This is not
Yeah.
the detriment
Yeah,
of her
no,
parent.
no,
Because
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like
If
one
they
that
weren't
always
there,
says
though,
this.
what would have happened? Even if they didn't know what to do or how to do it, if they weren't, even if my mom just didn't drive me to that doctor's appointment or drive me to that hospital, would I be here?
Yeah.
And my grandma, who was like my best friend in the whole world, 'cause
Yeah.
she's the one, another person that no matter what was right there. Even if she did not understand it, she was right there trying the whole time.
Yeah, and I mentioned it earlier. Like, like that's one of the most beautiful things that I see working in the field that I do is that I don't only get to work with the youth, I also get to work with the parents. And like I think parents get a lot of a bad rap when it comes to
I
when
blamed them at the time.
Exactly.
Right.
Like they don't know how to talk to me and they don't get it. And
But you can't impart what you don't possess.
they didn't know.
I
Yeah.
told him like, you guys,
They
we
didn't know.
can
I know that.
blame. I said I could blame, but then I got to blame my mom's
Right.
mom's
Yes,
mom's
yes.
mom because it's a generational
dad, his
thing.
dad, yeah.
right?
I mean, I
Like,
ran into
my
that
ancestors.
issue with my own mom, you know?
There you
Like,
go.
I could have blamed my mom for my whole
you
childhood.
might
you know?
have
know?
at some points.
But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, when you heal, you realize, oh wow, like we can't do what we don't know.
Yeah.
And so to me, the moving towards like, you know, shifts in even this type of challenge, such as mental health, suicide, is awareness. It's education.
Yeah.
It's teaching and equipping people. How do you have conversations? You know, how do you make it not so taboo, and how do you normalize difficult conversations?
Yeah.
Just
Yep.
challenging conversations where we hold space and not kind of fully assume, but allow people to unpack what it is that they're dealing with, because just that is therapeutic.
That's one of like that's the most basic complicated thing. Like my grandma would write me letters. We always wrote to each other.
Yeah.
And she would write like, if I don't understand, like tell me.
Yeah.
Just tell me if I'm doing something that's not helping.
That's so beautiful.
And
Yeah.
she would write it. We would write back and forth, you know. And she would always say like, when I worked in the jails when I first started here, it was kind of when she was declining. So there was a little period of time we could still talk about things. And I would, you know, tell her what I was doing, and because she was like my biggest cheerleader. So I would
Yeah.
always update her on those things. And she was like, they just need love. All those people in there, they just need love.
They
I'm like, you know, you're right,
That's
Grandma.
so good. Yeah,
That's
because
true.
That's all she
sometimes
ever
we
said,
can't
love's the
pinpoint
answer.
it, right? We can't say
Yeah.
like this is exactly
Yeah.
why X, Y, Z,
You
and
just need to care. Like someone caring about me saved my life.
Yeah.
I know I've been in that position. And like
I love that.
I get to pass that
I got
along.
chills.
I know.
compassionate care, right? Like
That's all
so, the
it takes,
imagine
man.
if
That's all it takes.
our whole world, right? Imagine if like from every aspect of the community, you were met with compassionate care, right? For one another, you know, and it's so simple as like in the grocery store or the gas station that I show up to the schools and those types of things, you know, it's just like a shift of, and it's hard because we live in a society, in a world where there's so much fear, there's pressure, there's challenges, there's struggles, there's things that people are dealing with as stressors. So how do we kind of support one another in that, you know?
That's why I do those little things like at the grocery store, because, and this is like a good way for me to like wrap up my passion behind this.
Yeah.
Like I always hoped and like in my own way prayed there was a purpose for my pain. And that's one of those things that carried me through. Like this has to be for something. Like this can't be for nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
And I've found that now, like what that purpose was, and that's to like bring it to other people and give that to others and be that person for someone. So I carry that through everything I do. If it's holding the door for someone, that might change their day.
Yeah.
So like that purpose has now played out, and it's just going to continue to if I keep taking care of myself.
Yeah.
You know, so that I think has been the biggest thing is like now I do get to be what I always hoped this was for, and now I get to I encompass that.
that's
It all
beautiful.
comes back to little things.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I do have one final question I want to ask. At least me, I have a question I want to ask you. So I feel that there's a lot of people who are in my boat, like the kid in middle school who saw their friend was going through the challenge, didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I feel that a lot of our listeners who are going to hop on this, you know, especially we share this with everybody.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who aren't in the world of recovery. Like, so from the perspective of someone who went through this, what is one thing you think a friend could do to show
question.
love, support, or anything
That's
as
a
somebody
really-
who went through that specifically?
That's a really good question. I think the biggest thing is like being that person that's like, I might not understand it, but I'm here and I love you. Like, I don't want to go behind your back, you know, and yes, we have to prioritize safety. We have to do that every day in our jobs here. But being like, I'm here, I don't get it, but I want to help you and I want to support you.
Safe place. Yeah.
I'm not going to judge you. I'm a safe person. What can we do? I want you to get better. Like just being that open and raw and like that no judgment safety. I think
that's
is
huge.
game changing.
Kayla, I want to ask that question to you too. What do you think is something that somebody could have done when you were growing up, like a friend who was maybe trying to help?
Yeah, I mean, I think very similarly, right? Is like, and I have those people in my life too that are like still around that like, thank God for them, even in, you know, the midst of my struggles, even though it may not have been like, that's what got me out. Like those things are the things that I remember as
Played a
part of the
pivotal
hope.
part,
Correct. And then that encouraging of like help, you know, of just like normalizing things into a sense of like, that I don't feel so alienated by my struggles,
Like
you
adding
know?
on to the
Yeah,
shame.
right. Yeah. Like I think, you know, and that's why I talk about like, even for me, like the people that really impacted me was like my probation officer. She had no reason to show me kindness. She treated me like a human when I was anything but feeling humane, you know? And so her kindness is a seed that has stuck with me in such a profound way. And that's why I think that anyone has the ability to have an impact, because I'll never forget her.
Yeah,
I know
she
her
was a
name,
light
I
in
know
the
who she
beacon of
was.
darkness.
Correct. She believed in me when I did not believe in myself, and I had a rap sheet to go along with it, you know? And so it's like those little things we don't realize, but when you plant a seed of kindness, like it goes a long way. And you may not be able to see the fruit of that because she doesn't know what I'm doing in life. The last time
she might not have thought anything of it.
Right. I did reach out to her though, like down the road when I first started working in drug court, you know, years
like,
and years
look
ago.
at
And I was like, listen here, like, you know,
I'm on the other side.
Yeah. And I guarantee you that probably sparked something for her with the work that she does
100%.
as a So, you know, it's those things that make a huge impact. You know, it's like we said, it's not one thing that kind of caused my life, but it's the same thing with recovery. It's not just one thing, it's all of these things that provided the support to my journey, you know?
There's not one thing that caused it, and there's not one solution. It's
correct.
such a process of both.
Yeah, but I remember every person that showed me kindness when I felt at my lowest, darkest moment of like inhumanity, you know? And I remember them, and I will remember them to the day I die.
And you know what's funny, when you actually look about, like, when you deep it even more and you think of all the things that aligned in the world for those things to happen for
Right?
that's what really is
Yes.
That
that's what blows
butterfly
my
effect.
mind.
that's the stuff that really motivates me a lot of times. It's just like all these pieces fell in such a perfect order for me to be where I am.
That I can't deny
that it's
God's
meant
grace.
to be. It's
Yeah.
God, that of course,
Yeah,
that
right.
God's aspect and his love is there, but it's almost like a destiny meant to be kind of like,
Yeah.
I'm doing the right thing
Well,
now,
if,
you know?
I always, people like ask me, like, do you regret like running away to Florida with this guy? I'm like, no. Like, was it terrible at the time? Yes.
Oh my God.
Would I do these things again? No.
Yeah.
But
I would never would have probably came to Florida.
Yeah.
And look
Yeah.
at my life now.
That's me, because like,
Yeah,
well, I went to
I'm
college
on
and I flunked out my first college, and like people will tell me like, you know, like, do you have regrets? I'm like, yeah, I have regrets. I wish I didn't do that. I probably would have a high paying job. I'd be chilling. But at the same time, that helped me.
You wouldn't be right here.
Exactly. It helped me
Yeah.
learn about myself. It helped me
Right.
grow. It helped me realize that I was dumb at
Yeah.
the time. So like, these are all learning lessons, you know? Everything's a learning lesson in life, you know?
It really
it's how
Take
it's
it.
perspective,
Yeah.
right? It's perspective.
Exactly.
How is this going to catapult me into what's next? I always say like
Absolutely.
whatever season we're in
Even if
is
it's challenging.
equipping. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now I look at
100%.
challenge in life. I'm like, this is what enables me to grow
Yes.
and become. And every time I now am faced with another challenge, I can look back and I'm like, man, girl, you are resilient AF. Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna get through this. There's what am I learning in the process and how am I navigating this? And then on the flip side, I'm like, okay, God, where are you going to use this for me to then
Right.
support somebody else?
Well, that's exactly, and that's just bringing my friend Jenny that passed back into it because she's so huge in my life. When she passed, I was like, what? Like, why? And it had to do with alcohol and driving and a whole situation. So it was very close to home for both her and I in our relationship.
Yeah.
So I was like what? Like, what's happening and why her, you know? But it also fueled me to carry that on. Her being that person for me fuels me even more to be that person for someone else. 'Cause I know she helped save my life.
Yeah.
So like now, like it just fires me more. Like obviously I didn't want that to happen and I miss her and all those things. But like now it's like, all right, like what you did for me, I'm gonna keep doing it for other people.
Yeah. I love movies like that. When I
Jenny's
see
the
movies like
Lighthouse.
that, when you see like someone passed and you see them trying to do something that maybe they wouldn't have in their honor, those are amazing stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It really is.
Thank you
I am
so much.
so upset that we need to end this
Yeah.
because I love this conversation
Yeah.
that we're having, but we are running short on time. So I just want to be the one to thank you.
Thank you guys for
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
Like
thank
you-
you. This is awesome.
This was a killer episode. Like I want to, you know, it's inspirational because now I'm thinking like, how can
Right?
I be a person who like shares like there is resources
Yeah.
out there, you know. Now I
Yeah.
want to go get the shirt that's like you matter and like stuff
I
like
know.
that,
Just
you
like
know?
I leave here like pumped.
Yeah,
up.
right. Like, let's
Oh
go
my
be
God.
kind
I
in the
have a
world.
meeting, though.
Yeah.
Kill something now.
So
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much. I
you,
really
guys.
appreciate you jumping on. I literally asked you like 2 days ago.
Yeah, and then yesterday told me what it was about.
Yeah,
I was like,
and,
all right, cool.
and again, it's like it's all about love. It's all about the
It is.
little
It's so
things.
important to me that like you could have asked me this morning and I'd be like, all right, let's do it.
Thank
I
you.
knew
Yeah.
that. That's why
So-
I was like, gotta ask.
Yeah.
To our wonderful watchers and our wonderful listeners out there, thank you. The love that you have given us has been felt, and
We love you.
And we love you guys. We really do, man. And I know
Absolutely.
a lot of people say that, but you know, love is love. You know, we want to spread it and share it as much as we can.
We mean it.
And we mean it, yeah. And a great way to experience that is to give us a follow and follow us on not only YouTube but also on everywhere you can listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple. We're everywhere.
In the bathroom.
Yeah,
In the
right.
bathroom, in the bathtub, in the
Not
car.
in an all staff meeting. I really want to.
Not in a staff meeting. No, don't do that. But please give us a like. Share this with your friends. You know, share some love. Maybe today this could be a really great resource for somebody in your life.
Yep.
And you know, it's the butterfly effect, right? The little things. You send it to a friend you didn't know they were struggling, and
Yeah.
boom,
Yep.
they just received a resource and they can connect,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
That's how it works, guys. That's what love is. Spreading it everywhere we can reach it, right? So make sure that you share this one, okay? Leave comments down below. You know, we here at South Florida Wellness Network, if you live in Broward, we can give you some support in that
Or
regard
Miami
too.
now. We in
Yeah.
Miami.
We're in Miami too.
Come
You know, we
visit
can
us.
connect you with resources. Anyway, reach out. You know, there's hands all over the place. Just reach out to one, okay?
And shout out to Jenny. What was her last name?
Golden.
Shout out to Jenny Golden.
Yeah.
Jenny the
Yeah.
Lighthouse. Absolutely. Inspiring future generations. Absolutely. Be well. Be safe. You are loved. You matter. See you next week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Cool.
Oh, that was awesome.
good.